Life never makes mistakes. Buddhist wisdom to accept and flow. There are moments in life when everything seems to fall apart, when plans dissolve, relationships end, and dreams fade before our eyes. In such moments, the mind screams that something has gone terribly wrong. We question ourselves, others, and even existence itself. Yet, from the deeper lens of Buddhist wisdom, every event, even the most painful, arises exactly as it should. The Buddha's teachings remind us that life is not a series of errors, but a continuous unfolding of causes and conditions perfectly aligned with the evolution of our consciousness. The human mind, conditioned by attachment and aversion, labels experiences as good or bad, success or failure. But beneath these judgments lies a deeper harmony. Life never makes mistakes because life does not operate under personal preference. It flows according to a natural law, dharma, the cosmic order. Everything we encounter, from joy to suffering, is a manifestation of this law, guiding us toward awareness, compassion, and liberation. To understand this truth, one must learn to see beyond appearances. Buddhism teaches that acceptance is not resignation, but wisdom in motion. It means surrendering to the moment with full awareness, realizing that resistance only multiplies suffering. When we accept, we stop fighting with reality and begin to flow with it. And in that flow, peace arises naturally. This path requires deep inner work. Learning to trust life's unfolding, to let go of control, and to see that even our detours lead us precisely where we must be. Through this journey, we awaken to the realization that there are no coincidences, no wasted moments, and no true losses. There is only life, teaching, reshaping, and transforming us into what we are destined to become. Let us now explore the profound wisdom that shows us how to accept and flow with life's rhythm, the essence of understanding that life never makes mistakes, the illusion of error, seeing beyond the mind's judgment. Human beings live under the illusion that life can go wrong. When events do not meet our expectations, we call them mistakes, failures, or misfortunes. Yet, in the Buddhist understanding, these labels arise from ignorance, from avidya, the blindness that prevents us from seeing the true nature of things. The mind constructs rigid ideals of how reality should unfold, and when the flow of life diverges from those ideals, suffering begins. In truth, there is no external error, only inner misunderstanding. Everything that happens follows the natural law of cause and effect, known as karma. What we perceive as chaos or injustice is often the ripening of seeds we once planted, either in this life or in countless previous ones. Karma does not punish. It teaches. It reveals what remains unhealed within us. Each event serves as a mirror, reflecting our attachments, fears, and illusions. To see that life never errs, one must look with the eyes of awareness rather than judgment. Awareness observes what is without labeling it. It does not cling to pleasure or reject pain. In this space of equanimity, we begin to see how even suffering contains wisdom. When we lose something we deeply love, for example, we are not being abandoned by life. We are being invited to discover love that does not depend on possession. The Buddha compared this realization to awakening from a dream. Within the dream, we panic when things fall apart. Upon awakening, we realize that what we feared was never truly real. The same applies to our daily life. The suffering born of expectation fades as soon as we awaken to the impermanence of all things. When the mind says, "This shouldn't have happened," wisdom responds, "It could not have been otherwise." Understanding this truth transforms our relationship with existence. We stop asking, "Why me?" and begin to see that life is not against us. It is for us, always aligning circumstances to dissolve our illusions and expand our consciousness. What we once called mistakes are, in reality, divine corrections, Consider the parable of the farmer, often told in Buddhist and Taoist traditions. A man's horse runs away, and his neighbors lament, "Such bad luck." The farmer simply replies, "Maybe." Days later, the horse returns, bringing several wild horses with it. "Such good luck," the neighbors exclaim. Again he says, "Maybe." Later, the farmer's son breaks his leg while taming one of the wild horses. "Such misfortune," cry the neighbors. "Maybe," says the farmer. Soon after, soldiers arrive to recruit all able-bodied men for war, but the son, with his broken leg, is spared. The moral is clear. We cannot see the full design of life from the narrow window of the present. What seems like loss may be protection. What feels like an ending may be preparation for something greater. When we learn to stop labeling experiences, peace arises naturally. Acceptance, therefore, begins with humility, the recognition that we do not know. We think we understand life's direction, but we are only seeing a fragment of an infinite tapestry. In the space beyond our judgments, a mysterious intelligence is always at work, weaving each thread with perfect precision. The practice of meditation helps us perceive this order. As we sit in stillness, observing thoughts without attachment, the mind's tendency to label weakens. We begin to sense the underlying harmony that moves through all things. We realize that what we call chaos is in truth the cosmos, life unfolding with divine coherence. To trust this flow is to walk the path of peace. When the heart understands that life never makes mistakes, fear dissolves. We stop trying to control every outcome, and we begin to live with grace. We let life breathe through us, move through us, and shape us into awareness itself. If you find yourself doubting this truth, look back on your own journey. How many times did something you feared later reveal itself as a blessing? How often did pain transform into growth, loss into liberation, endings into new beginnings? The pattern is undeniable. Life's intelligence has always been guiding you, even when you couldn't see it. Therefore, trust the unfolding. Let go of the need to understand every detail. The universe is wiser than our logic, and it never errs. Every delay, every detour, every heartbreak is a sacred step on the path of awakening. Life never makes mistakes. It only offers lessons disguised as challenges, guidance cloaked in confusion, and grace hidden within suffering. When you see this clearly, your heart softens and acceptance becomes natural. At that moment, you no longer resist what is. You begin to flow, not as an individual separate from life, but as life itself, eternally perfect in its imperfection. If you find peace and truth in these words, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, so this message of Buddhist wisdom can continue guiding your path towards stillness, trust, and awakening. The wisdom of acceptance, the doorway to inner freedom. To accept life as it comes is not weakness. It is the highest form of wisdom. Acceptance is the point where resistance dissolves, and reality is finally allowed to be what it is. This does not mean passivity or surrendering to injustice. Rather, it means recognizing that before we can transform anything, we must first see it as it is. The Buddha taught that all suffering begins when we argue with what already exists. We create stories around the present moment, wishing it were different, better, or more comfortable. Yet, the present moment is not our enemy. It is the teacher, the mirror, the silent guide that reveals the truth of our inner state. When we resist reality, we suffer twice. First, because the event itself might bring discomfort. Second, because our mind insists it should not be so. That second layer, our inner rebellion, is the true source of pain. It's the ego's cry that says, "This shouldn't happen to me." But who decides what should or shouldn't be? The mind believes it knows, yet its understanding is limited, shaped by conditioning, memory, and fear. It only sees fragments of the whole. Acceptance, therefore, is not agreement, it is clarity. It is the moment we stop fighting with existence and begin to see things without distortion. In this seeing, something extraordinary happens. The energy we used to spend resisting is freed and awareness expands. We begin to notice that life continues to move even without our control. The sun rises, the breath flows, the heart beats. Life was never waiting for our approval, it simply unfolds. When we accept, we step out of the illusion of control and rest in trust. We align ourselves with the movement of the universe rather than swimming against its current. Imagine a river flowing gently through a valley. Most people live trying to swim upstream, exhausting themselves in pursuit of a destination the river would have carried them to naturally. Acceptance is letting go of the struggle. It is realizing that the river already knows the way. It carries us toward growth, healing, and transformation, not always through comfort, but always through necessity. Yet, the mind fears acceptance. It believes that if we accept, we will stagnate, that acceptance equals defeat. This is a misunderstanding born from the ego's obsession with control. Acceptance is not the end of action. It is the beginning of wise action. When we accept the present moment, we see clearly what needs to be done, not through the filter of emotion or panic, but through awareness. The Buddha called this right understanding. From that place, our actions become skillful, compassionate, and effective. Take, for example, a person who loses their job. The initial reaction might be panic, anger, or despair. The mind screams, "This is wrong." But when acceptance enters, a deeper understanding arises. Perhaps that job no longer served one's purpose. Perhaps it was a gentle push toward a new direction. Acceptance allows space for new possibilities to emerge. Resistance closes that space, filling it with noise and fear. Only through acceptance can we hear the subtle guidance of life whispering, "This too has meaning." Every event in life carries a message. Acceptance is how we receive it. When we reject what happens, we reject the lesson. When we accept, we open ourselves to learning. Pain becomes a teacher rather than a curse. Suffering becomes an opportunity for awakening. Even illness, loss, or betrayal, when seen through the lens of awareness, can lead to profound transformation. The Buddha never promised that life would be free of pain. He promised freedom from suffering, the unnecessary pain created by resistance. The key lies in seeing that our internal reaction is what binds us. When we accept, the chains loosen. The body may experience discomfort, but the mind remains free. This is the essence of liberation, to live within change and impermanence without being enslaved by them. Acceptance is cultivated through mindfulness. In meditation, we practice watching thoughts and sensations arise and fade without clinging or rejection. This mirrors the process of living. When anger appears, we observe it without judgment. When sadness comes, we feel it fully without dramatization. Over time, we realize that all emotions are temporary visitors. They come, stay for a while, and pass. Our suffering arises not because of the emotion itself, but because we try to hold on or push it away. Through this practice, we learn to remain still even when storms arise. We become the observer rather than the participant in our emotional chaos. That stillness is the birthplace of acceptance. From that stillness, life flows again. We realize that what we once thought was an obstacle was only a wave on the surface of the ocean, unable to disturb its depth. To live in acceptance is to live in peace with impermanence. Every flower blooms and withers, every sunrise fades into night, every life begins and ends. The mind fears this truth and tries to cling to what it loves, yet clinging only amplifies pain. Acceptance does not mean indifference. It means loving fully while knowing that nothing belongs to us. It means embracing change as the natural rhythm of existence. When we stop demanding permanence from what is transient, our hearts become light. This is the essence of anicca, the Buddhist teaching of impermanence. Everything that arises will pass away. When we understand this deeply, we stop taking losses personally. The ending of something is not the universe's cruelty, it is the continuation of movement. The same law that brings spring must also bring winter. When we stop resisting, we discover that there is beauty even in the decay, wisdom even in the ending. Acceptance reveals this hidden grace. Some people confuse acceptance with apathy. They think that accepting means no longer caring. On the contrary, true acceptance heightens our sensitivity. When we accept reality, we are fully present with it. We no longer waste energy wishing for another version of life, and thus we can engage more deeply with the one we have. Acceptance allows compassion to bloom, for we see the world as it is, not as our desires wish it to be. Through acceptance, the heart softens. The barriers between me and the world begin to dissolve. We stop blaming others, for we see that everyone is also struggling with their own illusions and pain. We stop blaming ourselves, for we realize we were always learning, always growing through the same divine intelligence that guides all beings. Acceptance unites us with life in its entirety. At the highest level, acceptance becomes surrender, not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of wisdom. It is the moment we say, "Let thy will be done," not from religion but from understanding. It is realizing that the will of life is wiser than our own. The universe, in its infinite intelligence, orchestrates everything perfectly. Every delay, every detour, every silence is part of its choreography. The mind cannot grasp this perfection, but the soul feels it deeply. Surrender does not mean that we do nothing. It means that we act from alignment rather than resistance. Our actions become like the wind, gentle yet powerful, flowing with the current rather than against it. We no longer chase outcomes. We simply respond to what life presents with clarity and compassion. This is the highest form of freedom. When you learn to accept, even your suffering transforms. Pain may visit, but it no longer stays. Fear may arise, but it no longer governs. Disappointment may appear, but it loses its sting. You become anchored in the eternal now, untouchable by the fluctuations of external events. This state is not numbness, it is serenity. The Dhammapada, one of Buddhism's most sacred texts, says, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought. If a man speaks or acts with an impure mind, suffering follows him. If a man speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows him like a shadow." Acceptance purifies the mind. It aligns us with truth. The more we accept, the more we act from purity rather than fear. And from that purity, peace follows us effortlessly. Consider the lotus, the symbol of enlightenment. It blooms beautifully, yet it grows from the mud. The lotus does not reject the mud, it transforms it. Likewise, acceptance turns every difficulty into nourishment for the soul. Without resistance, pain becomes wisdom. Without clinging, joy becomes gratitude. This is how we flow with life. The art of acceptance must be lived moment by moment. Every breath offers an opportunity to surrender to what is. When someone speaks harshly, can you stay open? When plans fall apart, can you breathe rather than panic? When loss appears, can you trust that nothing real is ever lost? Each moment of acceptance is a doorway to freedom. Ultimately, acceptance is the recognition that life never makes mistakes. The path may twist, the road may darken, but the direction is always perfect. Every obstacle is a teacher, every ending a new beginning. The mind cannot see it in real time, but the heart knows it once the storm passes. Life unfolds not according to our desires, but according to our growth. And that growth is love's highest expression. To live this truth is to move from fear to faith, not blind faith, but the faith born of experience. You have already survived everything you once thought you could not. You have already been guided through darkness to light countless times. Each time you thought life was against you, it was quietly preparing you for something deeper. The more you accept, the more this pattern becomes visible. Trust that even when life seems cruel, it is never wrong. Behind every closed door is protection. Behind every loss is purification. Behind every silence is guidance. Acceptance reveals this secret. When you stop resisting, you hear life speaking in whispers instead of shouts. You begin to move with it effortlessly, gracefully, as if you and the universe were dancing together. When acceptance becomes your natural state, peace ceases to be something you seek. It becomes who you are. You live in harmony with the flow of existence. Nothing external can take your serenity away because your peace no longer depends on conditions. It comes from knowing that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Life never makes mistakes. The path you walk, with all its detours and trials, is the perfect terrain for your awakening. Accept it, and you will find that even your deepest pain becomes sacred ground. If this truth resonates with you, support this space by subscribing to the channel so that more souls can awaken to the peace that arises when we finally stop resisting and begin to flow with life. Flowing with life. The art of moving without resistance. To flow with life is to move with the rhythm of existence rather than against it. It is to live in harmony with what is, trusting that every event, every encounter, every silence carries the intelligence of the universe. This flow is not something we create. It is something we uncover when we release control. The river of life has always been moving, yet most of us spend our days trying to dictate its direction. We cling to what we love, we reject what we fear, and in doing so, we become fragmented. Flow is the return to wholeness. It is the deep inner surrender that allows us to be carried by the current instead of drowning in our own resistance. Buddhism teaches that the greatest suffering arises when we resist impermanence. The ego wants security, predictability, and permanence, but life is change itself. Every attempt to hold on creates tension. To flow is to live in acceptance of this impermanence. It is not indifference, it is profound awareness. Flow does not mean drifting aimlessly, nor does it mean passivity. It is conscious movement, guided by trust, shaped by presence and grounded in wisdom. It is the natural state of being when one's mind is no longer clinging to fixed outcomes. The Buddha compared life to a river for a reason. A river never asks where it is going. It simply moves, adapting to every obstacle in its path. When it meets a rock, it flows around it. When it encounters a fall, it becomes a waterfall, not resisting the descent. Eventually, it reaches the ocean. In the same way, when we live without resistance, we allow life to shape us, to polish our rough edges, to expand our awareness. We stop demanding that circumstances obey our preferences and instead learn to dance with what arises. Flowing with life begins with stillness. Paradoxically, to move with life, we must first stop running from it. Meditation reveals this secret. In silence, we observe the constant movement of thoughts, sensations, and emotions. We notice that even within stillness, everything flows. The breath moves in and out, the body expands and contracts, awareness itself ebbs and flows. The nature of existence is movement, yet that movement is guided by stillness. Just as the river's flow is shaped by the stillness of its banks, life's movement is held by the stillness of consciousness. When you begin to live from that stillness, you stop forcing life. You no longer push against the current of time or grasp for control. You begin to listen, to truly listen to what life is saying. Every delay becomes a teacher, every disappointment a redirection, every silence an invitation to trust. You realize that what you once called obstacles are simply the universe's way of reshaping your path to align with a deeper truth. To flow means to relinquish the illusion of control, but not the power of response. You cannot control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. You cannot decide when the storm will end, but you can learn to move with it rather than fight it. This is the heart of Buddhist practice, not to escape life's changes, but to find peace within them. The mind will always crave certainty, yet true serenity comes not from knowing what will happen next, but from trusting that whatever comes is the next step in your evolution. Trust is the essence of flow. The ego distrusts life because it believes itself to be separate. It fears that if it lets go, it will fall apart. But when we begin to see that we are part of something infinitely wise, the need for control dissolves. We realize that we were never steering the river to begin with. We were always being carried. Every step we've taken, every encounter we've had, has been perfectly placed. The path of flow is not without challenges. To flow does not mean life becomes easy. It means that difficulty no longer defines us. When pain arrives, we do not resist it. We allow it to move through us. When joy appears, we savor it without grasping. In both cases, we remain anchored in awareness. Flow is not about the absence of suffering, but about the absence of resistance to suffering. When we stop saying no to life, peace enters. There is a story of a monk who was crossing a river with his disciple. The disciple was tense, fearing he would fall. The monk said, "Do not fight the water, let it hold you." The disciple relaxed, and suddenly he realized that the water itself was carrying him. Life is the same. The more we struggle against its current, the more we sink. The moment we trust, we are lifted. Flowing with life also means understanding the law of impermanence in relationships, ambitions, and emotions. The love you feel today may fade tomorrow, and yet that fading is not a tragedy. It is transformation. The success you celebrate may one day dissolve, but that too is movement. Every experience serves to awaken awareness. Nothing is wasted. Nothing truly ends. The flow carries everything forward into new forms, new lessons, new expressions of being. In the deepest flow, the idea of me begins to dissolve. You no longer see yourself as separate from the events of life. You realize that you are not a small self moving through a vast world. You are the world moving through itself. Life breathes through you, speaks through you, acts through you. When this truth is experienced, peace becomes unshakable. The burdens of worry, control, and fear fall away because there is no one left to carry them. To live in flow is to live in the eternal present. The mind constantly drags us into the past or pushes us into the future, but flow happens only now. The river flows only in this moment. When you are fully here, life moves effortlessly. Every action becomes aligned with what is needed. You say what must be said, do what must be done, and let go of what must go. There is no overthinking, no hesitation, no regret, only presence expressing itself through action. Flow also brings humility. When we realize we are not in control, arrogance fades. We stop boasting about success or lamenting failure. Both are part of the same movement. What the world calls luck or misfortune are simply different faces of the same flow. The enlightened being sees no difference. He remains calm in abundance and calm in scarcity, for he knows that both are transient expressions of life's dance. One of the greatest barriers to flow is attachment. The Buddha called attachment the root of suffering. When we cling to something, an idea, a person, a role, we stop flowing. We become stagnant. To flow, we must release these attachments, not by suppressing desire, but by understanding its nature. Every desire points to a deeper longing for peace, love, or fulfillment. When we see that these qualities already exist within us, desire loses its grip. We no longer chase them in the external world. This inner fulfillment allows us to move through life freely, unburdened by constant wanting. Gratitude is the natural fragrance of flow. When you stop fighting life, you begin to see beauty everywhere. Even the smallest things, the sound of rain, the scent of tea, the warmth of light, become gateways to presence. You realize that peace was never missing. It was only obscured by resistance. Gratitude anchors you in this awareness. Every moment becomes a gift, even the painful ones, because each contains a fragment of truth. Flowing with life also transforms how we relate to others. We stop trying to change people, to make them fit our expectations. We allow them to be who they are, just as we allow life to be what it is. This does not mean we tolerate harm. Rather, we respond from clarity, not reactivity. Flow gives rise to compassion, for we see that everyone is being carried by the same current, each at their own stage of awakening. We stop judging others for where they are in the river, for we know we too have been carried through darkness before reaching light. When life flows through you, your actions become effortless and wise. The right words come without force. The right opportunities appear without chasing. This is not magic, it is alignment. The universe responds to a heart that trusts. The more you flow, the more synchronicities arise, guiding you to exactly where you need to be. What you once called coincidence reveals itself as divine timing. The more you relax, the clearer your path becomes. But flow requires faith, and faith grows through surrender. Sometimes life will test your trust. It will bring storms, loss and silence to see if your faith rests on circumstances or truth. In those moments, do not run. Sit in stillness. Remember that even the river's rapids are part of its movement. The chaos is not the end, it is transformation in process. When you stop resisting the turbulence, you discover that the same force that shakes you is also carrying you home. Every spiritual tradition echoes this truth in its own language: surrender, trust, let go, flow. But these are not abstract ideals. They are daily practices. Each time you face something you cannot control, you are invited to practice flow. Each time plans collapse, you are being shown that you never needed control to begin with. Life flows, not because of your will, but because of its own eternal rhythm. To live in flow is to live fearlessly. Fear arises when we believe we are separate from life's movement. But once we see that we are the movement itself, fear dissolves. What could you fear when everything that happens is part of your unfolding? Even death loses its terror, for it is not the end of the flow, but its continuation in another form. The same river that disappears underground eventually resurfaces elsewhere, still part of the same vast cycle. In the heart of flow, the opposites merge. Success and failure, joy and sorrow, gain and loss, all dissolve into one continuous rhythm. You no longer chase one or avoid the other. You understand that both are waves rising and falling in the same ocean. When the wave rises, you celebrate. When it falls, you bow. Either way, you remain at peace, for you have learned to trust the sea. The more you flow, the simpler life becomes. You stop overanalyzing every event, stop demanding explanations, stop labeling experiences as good or bad. You begin to live directly, without filters. When you eat, you taste. When you walk, you feel the ground beneath your feet. When you speak, you mean your words. Flow simplifies because it aligns you with reality as it is. Complexity belongs to the mind. Simplicity belongs to truth. Eventually, flow becomes not something you do, but something you are. It is no longer a practice, but a state of being. You live without hesitation, without regret, without constant questioning. Life moves through you effortlessly because you no longer stand in its way. You realize that the river has always been flowing, that your struggle was only a misunderstanding. Now you float, and in that floating you are free. Flow does not promise a life without challenges, but it does promise a life without unnecessary suffering. You will still feel pain, but you will no longer resist it. You will still experience change, but you will no longer fear it. You will still love deeply, but you will no longer cling. Every experience will pass through you like wind through the trees, touching you, moving you, but never binding you. When you truly understand this, you stop searching for perfection in the future. You realize that the flow of life is perfect as it is right now. There are no mistakes, only movement. The path you walk is not random. It is the exact terrain needed for your soul's unfolding. Every detour is divine. Every pause is purposeful. Every fall is a step toward awakening. The Buddha said, "When you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky." That laughter is the sound of flow. It is the recognition that all your struggles were waves against the inevitable current of love that has been carrying you all along. Flow, then, is not something you attain. It is what remains when you stop resisting. It is the state of grace that reveals itself when control dissolves. It is the peace that arises when you finally trust that life never makes mistakes. If these words resonate with your heart, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, to continue walking this path of awareness, trust, and freedom together, learning to flow with life in its perfect rhythm, trusting the unseen, faith in the perfection of the unknown. There comes a point on every spiritual path when understanding alone is no longer enough. Logic begins to fade, the familiar dissolves, and life invites us into the vast unknown. It is in this sacred space that the deepest wisdom of Buddhism takes root, trust in the unseen. To live fully, we must learn to walk not by certainty, but by faith. Not blind faith, but the serene confidence that existence itself is wise. Trusting life means releasing the mind's need to explain, to predict, to control. It is opening our hands and allowing what is meant for us to arrive in its own time, even when we cannot yet see the pattern forming. Faith, in its truest sense, is not about belief in dogma. It is a profound state of inner alignment with the mysterious flow of reality. The Buddha did not ask for blind obedience, but for experiential trust. He taught that truth is not imposed, it is discovered. But before it can be seen, one must dare to walk through the fog. To trust life, we must allow the heart to lead where the intellect cannot. This is not easy, for the mind is addicted to clarity and control. Yet every time we surrender the demand for certainty, we step closer to freedom. The unseen is not empty. It is full of potential, waiting to take form through the right causes and conditions. Every delay, every silence, every unanswered question carries meaning. The seed hidden in the dark soil does not doubt the spring. It simply waits, trusting that warmth and light will come. In the same way, we are called to rest in patience, to trust that even when life seems still, the process of growth continues silently within. What appears as stagnation is often gestation. The universe works in rhythms that our minds cannot measure. Buddhism invites us to see life not as a series of random events, but as a living web of interconnectedness, pratyasamutpada, dependent origination. Everything arises because of something else. Every joy, every sorrow, every coincidence is part of a larger harmony. Trusting the unseen means remembering this truth when the thread of our story disappears into shadow. Even when we cannot see the next step, the path exists. We are never walking into nothingness. We are walking into purpose that has not yet revealed itself. To live in trust is to cultivate a calm relationship with uncertainty. Most of our anxiety comes not from what happens, but from our resistance to not knowing. We crave guarantees, and when life refuses to provide them, we suffer. Yet uncertainty is not an enemy. It is life's purest expression of freedom. If everything were predetermined, growth would be impossible. The unknown is the womb of transformation. In embracing it, we learn to dance with life's mystery instead of fearing it. Consider how the ocean moves. The waves rise and fall without resistance. The tides shift without struggle. The sea does not need to know where it is going. It simply flows, guided by the invisible pull of the moon. So too must we learn to trust the invisible forces shaping our journey. When we surrender to them, our actions align naturally with the deeper intelligence of existence. We stop trying to swim against the tide of time and instead let it carry us to where we truly belong. Trusting the unseen also means letting go of the illusion that we are separate from life's wisdom. We imagine ourselves as isolated beings trying to navigate an indifferent universe, but this is an error of perception. We are not in the universe. We are expressions of it. The same intelligence that moves the stars moves within us. When we listen deeply, that inner guidance becomes clear. The intuition we so often doubt is not fantasy. It is the whisper of the universal consciousness that knows more than thought ever could. But faith must be practiced, not merely admired. It grows through experience, especially in times of loss or confusion. When everything falls apart, when answers vanish, when silence stretches endlessly before us, that is when trust must take root. It is easy to trust when life flows smoothly, but real faith is born in the storm. The Buddha compared the spiritual path to crossing a river. We cling to the raft of practice, letting it carry us, not because we can see the opposite shore, but because we know it exists. We do not demand proof of the other side. We move with confidence born of inner knowing. Trust does not mean that pain will vanish or that everything will appear simple. It means that even in difficulty we know that life is not wrong. When betrayal comes, trust that it clears the path for truth. When endings arrive, trust that they prepare space for beginnings. When silence envelops you, trust that it is teaching you how to listen. The unseen works in paradoxes. What seems like loss is often liberation in disguise. What feels like delay may be divine timing, ensuring that when the door opens, you are truly ready to walk through it. The mind will argue endlessly against this. It will demand reasons, it will demand timelines, it will insist that faith is naive. But the more we feed this voice, the more we suffer. The ego wants to be the author of life's script. Trust allows life to write through us. There's a saying in Zen, when the archer shoots for no reason, he has all his skill. The meaning is simple. When we stop obsessing over the outcome, we become one with the action itself. Trust removes the distance between us and the moment. Life flows effortlessly through us when we stop trying to control its direction. Every spiritual teacher, in one form or another, points to this truth. Lao Tzu said, "The sage is content to follow the Tao, like a shadow following the body." Jesus spoke of lilies that neither toil nor spin, yet are clothed in splendor. The Buddha taught that peace arises when we cease to crave and grasp. All these teachings converge at one point: trust in the perfection of what is. To trust the unseen is to live in alignment with this timeless wisdom that transcends culture, religion, and language. There is beauty in not knowing. When the mind releases its grip, the heart begins to see differently. We become more attuned to the subtle signs of life guiding us. A conversation, a chance encounter, a sudden intuition, all become messages from the unseen. Synchronicities appear not because we manipulate reality, but because we are finally in harmony with it. Life responds to the frequency of trust. When we move with faith, doors open where logic once saw only walls. But trust requires vulnerability. To surrender to life is to admit that we do not have all the answers. This humility opens the way to grace. Pride builds barriers, trust dissolves them. When we trust, we no longer view uncertainty as a threat, but as a divine invitation. It means saying yes to life without demanding to understand everything it asks of us. It is to breathe deeply in the darkness, knowing that dawn will come, not because we control the sun, but because we are aligned with the rhythm of its rising. In meditation, this trust becomes tangible. When the mind quiets, the boundary between the seen and unseen fades. We feel the pulse of life flowing through us. The same silence that once frightened us becomes a sanctuary. In that stillness, we understand that everything we seek is already moving toward us. The only thing that ever stood in the way was our resistance. The heart that trusts becomes a magnet for harmony because it no longer blocks the current of abundance with fear. Trust also transforms how we handle endings. In the material world, we see death, separation, and failure as final. But in the realm of truth, nothing ever truly ends. It only changes form. Trusting the unseen means knowing that behind every disappearance, something continues. Energy never ceases. It transforms. The relationship that ends may become a lesson. The dream that fails may become wisdom. The loved one who departs may live on through essence. When we grasp this truth, grief softens into reverence. We stop clinging to what fades and begin to honor what remains. To trust life is to trust time. Everything happens precisely when it must. The ego rushes, wisdom waits. The lotus blooms not because it is told to, but because the conditions are right. Likewise, our growth unfolds when we stop forcing it. Impatience is a sign that we have forgotten the unseen order at work. When we align with it, peace replaces urgency. We no longer beg life to deliver. We prepare ourselves to receive. In Zen tradition, there is a saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. This is the embodiment of trust. It means that we continue to live our daily lives, working, loving, serving, with the same presence, knowing that even the smallest action participates in the great unfolding. We do not need to see the divine plan. We are already part of it. Trusting the unseen is realizing that every moment, no matter how ordinary, is sacred. Trust transforms fear into curiosity. Instead of asking, "What if this goes wrong?" we begin to ask, "What is life trying to show me here?" This simple shift changes everything. Fear contracts, trust expands. When we trust, we move forward with openness. Even if we stumble, we know the fall is not a failure but a lesson. This fearless curiosity allows life to reveal its hidden beauty. The unknown ceases to be a void and becomes a canvas where infinite possibilities can appear. To cultivate this trust, one must practice daily. Observe where fear arises, where doubt whispers, where control tightens its grip. In those moments, breathe deeply and release. Remind yourself that life has carried you this far. It has never abandoned you. Every pain you've endured, every confusion you've faced, has led you here, to this awareness. That is proof enough of life's intelligence. The unseen has always been working, even when you thought you were lost. In time, trust becomes a way of being. You stop asking life to prove itself. You no longer need constant reassurance. You live with quiet confidence, knowing that everything is unfolding as it should. When loss comes, you bow to it. When joy visits, you embrace it. When the path darkens, you continue walking. This is faith in action, not as belief, but as lived surrender. You realize that peace was never about understanding everything. It was about trusting enough to keep your heart open, even when you understand nothing. Trusting the unseen is not escapism. It does not deny pain or ignore responsibility. It is an act of courage, the courage to remain open when everything in you wants to close. It is standing in the middle of uncertainty and saying, "I will not fear, I will trust the unfolding." In that moment, the soul expands. You become vast like the sky, untouched by storms, illuminated from within. This is the state of awakening, When trust replaces doubt, peace replaces fear, and life is seen not as a series of mistakes, but as an eternal perfection revealing itself through time. When you live this truth, life responds with grace. You begin to meet people at the right moment, receive opportunities aligned with your growth, and feel guided even in silence. The more you trust, the more evidence you see that you were never alone. The unseen has always been holding you, waiting for your surrender to show its benevolence. This is not magic, it is resonance. When your heart beats in rhythm with life, the universe harmonizes in return. In this deep trust, you no longer seek to control the flow, you become the flow. You no longer need signs, for every breath becomes a sign. You no longer seek answers, for every moment becomes the answer. The distinction between you and life dissolves completely. What remains is oneness, pure being, unshaken by circumstance, radiant in silence. Life never makes mistakes because it cannot. What we call mystery is simply perfection beyond comprehension. To trust the unseen is to live in harmony with that mystery. It is to walk through the fog without fear, knowing that the ground beneath your feet appears precisely as you take each step. You realize that nothing real is ever lost, that every end is a beginning, and that even in the dark, you are being guided toward light. If these words awaken something within you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, so we can continue walking together through the unseen paths of life, where faith becomes freedom and trust becomes peace. The perfection of every moment. Seeing the divine order in all things. The deeper one walks along the path of awareness, the clearer it becomes that every moment, no matter how ordinary, painful, or confusing, carries within it a hidden perfection. Life, when seen through the lens of the awakened heart, is not a series of random events, but an unbroken stream of divine intelligence expressing itself in infinite forms. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from ignorance, from the blindness that prevents us from seeing the true nature of existence. The moment we begin to see clearly, the illusion of chaos dissolves, and what remains is order. Not the rigid order of human design, but the living order of the universe, where even the smallest detail serves a purpose in the grand unfolding. To perceive this order, we must learn to see without judgment. The human mind is conditioned to divide experience into categories of good and bad, success and failure, gain and loss. But life itself does not know these divisions. It simply is. The rain that ruins a picnic also nourishes the soil. The ending that breaks your heart also makes space for renewal. The silence that feels unbearable is often the womb of transformation. Everything is connected, everything serves, everything belongs. When this truth is realized, not as theory but as lived experience, peace dawns naturally, effortlessly, and permanently. Imagine standing before a vast tapestry. Up close, all you see are threads crossing chaotically, tangles of color that seem without meaning, but step back and the pattern reveals itself. Harmonious, intricate, breathtakingly precise. This is how life appears to the awakened mind, while the ego, trapped in the immediacy of its desires and fears, sees only fragments and mistakes. Awareness sees the whole. It understands that every thread, even the dark ones, is necessary for the masterpiece to exist. The moments you resented most were the ones that shaped your strength. The losses you mourned most deeply were the very ones that freed your soul. There was never an error, only evolution. This understanding transforms the way we live. Instead of constantly striving to fix life, we begin to cooperate with it. Instead of fighting against the flow, we learn to dance within it. Acceptance becomes our natural state, not because we have given up, but because we have awakened to reality's perfection. This shift does not make us passive, it makes us powerful. When we act from alignment with the greater order, our actions become clear, efficient, and compassionate. We no longer act out of fear or control, but from harmony with what is. The energy once wasted in resistance now fuels creativity and wisdom. One of the most profound insights in Buddhist philosophy is that everything arises and passes away according to causes and conditions. Nothing stands alone. Nothing happens in isolation. Every event, every relationship, every circumstance is part of an interdependent chain stretching far beyond our comprehension. When something painful happens, the mind asks, "Why me?" But awareness understands. There is no me separate from life. The event did not happen to you. It happened through you as part of the whole. The flower blooms not because it decides to, but because sunlight, water, soil, and time come together. Likewise, our lives unfold through countless interactions of visible and invisible forces. When we realize this, blame disappears and gratitude takes its place. To see perfection in every moment, one must learn to be fully present. The mind, lost in the past or racing toward the future, misses the sacredness of now. Yet now is all that ever truly exists. Each breath, each sensation, each sound contains the essence of life itself. When you slow down enough to notice, you see that nothing is missing. Even in discomfort, there is aliveness. Even in stillness, there is movement. The ordinary becomes extraordinary, and the mundane reveals its holiness. Washing a dish, walking in the rain, listening to the sound of your own heartbeat, all become acts of communion with the divine rhythm of existence. The greatest masters have always pointed to this truth. They did not escape the world to find perfection. They discovered it within the world. The Buddha touched the earth as he awakened, declaring that enlightenment is not elsewhere but here, in the very soil of our daily lives. Perfection is not an achievement, but a perception. When the veil of illusion lifts, you see that life has always been whole. The storms were not punishments, but purifications. The detours were not distractions, but directions. The pain was not cruelty, but a call to awareness. What was once seen as chaos is revealed as choreography. To live in this awareness is to live without resistance. It means that whatever arises, we greet it as part of the dance. Joy comes and we bow to it. Sorrow comes and we bow to it. Each becomes a teacher, each a guide. This is not fatalism. It is freedom. We stop trying to bend life to our will and instead allow our will to merge with life's greater wisdom. The paradox is that when we stop forcing, everything begins to flow naturally. Opportunities appear, relationships align, healing unfolds. Life's intelligence moves through us effortlessly because we are no longer blocking it with fear or attachment. The perfection of every moment also means that nothing needs to be postponed. Enlightenment is not a distant goal waiting at the end of a long path. It is available now, in this breath, in this instant. The mind, addicted to becoming, always says, "I will be at peace when..." But peace does not depend on future circumstances. It blooms the moment we stop arguing with what is. When you see that this moment is complete, you stop waiting for life to begin. You realize it already has. You are not on the way to perfection. You are standing inside it. This understanding changes how we experience suffering. Pain no longer feels like punishment, but like a process. Just as gold must endure fire to shine, the soul must endure challenge to awaken. The hardships of life become sacred initiations, burning away illusion and revealing essence. We do not need to seek suffering, nor should we deny it. We simply meet it with awareness, allowing it to do its work. Every tear, every loss, every ache becomes a thread in the tapestry of awakening. There is no wasted sorrow, for each drop of pain waters the seeds of compassion. When you see perfection in everything, gratitude becomes your natural language. You stop taking the small things for granted. The air filling your lungs, the light on the wall, the presence of another being beside you. Even challenges evoke thankfulness, because you see them as invitations to grow. Gratitude transforms perception. It shifts the mind from scarcity to abundance, from resistance to flow. The more you thank life, the more life reveals its generosity. Every moment becomes a gift, and you realize you have been blessed all along. But this vision requires humility. To see perfection is to admit that you do not know better than life. The ego resists this truth, for it thrives on control. Yet the more we insist that things should be different, the more we suffer. Humility opens the eyes to reality's beauty. It allows us to bow to life's wisdom, even when we do not understand it. The awakened being does not claim to have mastered life. They have learned to serve it. They follow its flow, trusting that every turn, even the sharp ones, leads toward awakening. When we live this way, we begin to perceive synchronicity everywhere. The right person appears at the right time. The right opportunity arises when we stop chasing. The right words come when they are needed. This is not coincidence, but coherence. The natural alignment that emerges when we trust life's order. The mind calls it luck. The heart knows it as harmony. You do not have to manipulate reality to make things happen. You simply need to stay attuned to its rhythm. Life moves through you effortlessly when you stop separating yourself from it. The perfection of every moment also means that forgiveness becomes effortless. When you understand that everyone acts from their level of awareness, judgment dissolves. You see that those who hurt you were also instruments of life, pushing you towards strength, clarity, or compassion. This does not excuse harm, but contextualizes it. When you see through the lens of perfection, resentment cannot survive. You forgive, not because you condone, but because you understand. And in that understanding, your heart becomes light again. You realize that love was never broken, only hidden beneath misunderstanding. The greatest expression of wisdom is love. Not sentimental love, but the unconditional love that arises when separation dissolves. When you see perfection in all things, you cannot help but love everything, even the difficult parts. Love becomes your natural response to existence. You love not because things please you, but because you see yourself in all things. The tree, the stranger, the storm, all are expressions of the same life that breathes through you. This is compassion in its purest form, the recognition of unity behind diversity. From this state, service becomes spontaneous. You do not help others out of duty, but because you feel their being as your own. As you deepen in this awareness, even time changes. You no longer live chained to the past or anxious about the future. You realize that both are illusions, mental constructs. Only the present is real, and it is perfect. The mind always says, if only things were different, but awareness sees that they are exactly as they must be. The moment you align with this truth, you are free. Nothing outside you needs to change for peace to arise. Peace is not the result of perfection. Peace is the recognition of it. Eventually, you understand that life's perfection includes your imperfections. The moments you stumbled, the choices you regret, the flaws you hide, all are part of the path. There is no mistake that cannot serve awakening. Every error is a teacher, every wound a doorway. When you forgive yourself, the weight of guilt lifts, and you realize that even your darkest moments were guided by grace. Life never punishes, it educates. The pain you felt was not condemnation, but correction, leading you back to alignment. When you see this, shame transforms into reverence. You bow to your own journey, knowing that it too has been perfect. The perfection of every moment is not something you achieve. It is something you notice when the noise of the mind quiets. When you stop demanding that life follow your plan, you begin to see that it already follows a greater plan. Every sunrise, every loss, every breath is part of the same divine composition. The universe is not random, it is intelligent beyond comprehension. And you are not a spectator of it, you are its expression. To see perfection is to see yourself as part of that infinite harmony, inseparable from the whole. This realization brings unshakable peace. Not the peace that comes and goes with circumstances, but the peace that remains even in the midst of storms. You no longer seek escape from life because you no longer see life as a problem. You do not need guarantees or control. You live as presence, aware, open, trusting. When joy comes, you smile. When pain comes, you breathe. Both are waves on the same ocean, and you have become the ocean itself. This is liberation, to rest in the perfection of now. And when you live this way, your very presence becomes healing. Others feel peace around you because you no longer resist what is. You radiate acceptance, and in your stillness, others remember their own. This is how awakening spreads, not through preaching, but through presence. The perfection you recognize in life reflects through you, silently teaching those who cross your path. You become a living reminder that life never makes mistakes, that every moment is sacred, that everything belongs. So when confusion arises, breathe. When fear whispers, listen without reacting. When pain visits, welcome it as a teacher. When beauty appears, receive it fully. Every moment, no matter how small, is an opportunity to remember the truth. Life is perfect in its unfolding. Nothing is missing, nothing is out of place. The river flows exactly as it must, and you are part of its current. To trust this completely is to awaken. It is to live without resistance, without judgment, without fear. It is to walk through the world with a quiet smile, knowing that every step, even those taken in darkness, is guided by light. It is to rest in the eternal affirmation that life never makes mistakes. Everything is as it should be, or always has been, always will be. If this message speaks to your soul, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, so we can continue exploring together the timeless wisdom that teaches us to trust, accept, and flow with the perfect rhythm of life.